Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's masterclass with Ashley Anderson of Ezra Sage. We're so happy to have you here with us.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here.
Well, and thank you all for joining us for today. Your brain on year end, avoiding stress traps that sabotage performance. A few small housekeeping notes. This is recorded, so you will have access to the recording here on LinkedIn and on our YouTube channel. We'd love for you to be active in the comments. So tell us where you're joining from, what you're kind of struggling with as you get closer to year end. We'd love to hear from you. And there will be a Q&A at the end with Ashley. So add any questions that you may have throughout the presentation into the comments, and we will try to get to all of them at the end. So before we dive in, I wanted to introduce Ashley. Ashley Anderson is the founder and CEO of Ezra Sage, where she partners with organizations from global enterprises to startups, universities to nonprofits to strengthen workforce well-being and prevent burnout. As a certified executive coach, speaker, and facilitator, she specializes in helping leaders and teams work with their brain's wiring, not against it. She's here today because year-end doesn't have to mean meltdown, and she's here to tell us why. So Ashley, welcome.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you.
This is a topic that I feel like all of us are needing. And we were just talking before we got on about how we can't believe Thanksgiving is next week because it has snuck up on us once again. So I feel like it's very, very, very applicable.
Yeah. And the thing about what we're going to be talking about today, the bonus, I guess, is that yes, it's very applicable to this time of year, but it's also applicable to any time of year because we know that stress isn't, reserved just for end of year. It just is like extra spicy.
It just accumulates more at the end, but totally, because I think there's so many different seasons of I think too, as a mom, end of school year is really stressful. Summer child, there's periods in the year where it is really stressful, especially as a parent in the workforce trying to manage it all. But we don't ever really manage it all, do we?
No. And let's not put that expectation on ourselves, anyone. And that's part of what we're going to be talking about today as one of our key levers that we can affect in terms of lowering our stress and not having the pressure lead to burnout or whatnot. So yeah, I'm excited to dive in. So I would love to have everybody just kind of think about all of the things that are stressing you out right now. And I know that you came here for solutions and are like, oh my gosh, we're starting by me thinking about all the things that are stressing me out. But yes, we're going to start there. And I promise we are going to get to solutions. But just all the things personally, professionally, and all facets of life that are stressing you out. And I'm sure you're kind of coming up with things like project deadlines or holiday shopping, family coordinating. I know, Elizabeth, we were just talking about kind of travel plans. Yeah. And then there's the end of the year budget planning, performance reviews. I mean, the list goes on. And I'm curious, how many things on this slide alone apply to you?
I mean, do you see my eyes right now? I'm like, yeah, this is like a mind map. And also we had to meet with we had to do tax stuff yesterday, just thinking about year end and getting all that organized.
Yeah, I've just sort of ignored that part.
No, you just compartmentalized it and just put it in a box and put it away, and then you'll get it. You'll get it.
Too. What? Yeah, we do what we have to do for survival sometimes. Right. But I mean, there are a lot of things on the slide, and this is just the half of it, right? Mm-hmm. And stress and pressure are year round. But as I said, there's something extra special about this time of year that can make that that regular run of the mill stress just go through the roof. And you're not alone, Elizabeth. I know I'm not alone. And everybody out there who's nodding along and saying yes to all these things on this slide, you're not alone and you're in the right place, because today is we're not just talking about stress and all of our stressors, but we're going to be talking about what we can do to make a real difference in how stress is showing up this time of year. And I just want to start with a few stats. Again, a lot in the vein of not feeling so alone. So the American Psychological Association says that 38% of people report an increase in stress this time of year. with things like lack of time, financial pressures, family obligations, all really contributing to that increased stress level. And I see you nodding, Elizabeth. You're like,
I'm like, yes, you've captured it all.
those things apply for me. And I'm sure this is going to feel right at home for you too. There was a study in the Journal of Occupational Health Psychology, in case you're interested in, digging into the journal where this stat comes from, that talks about Q4 being a particularly high state of stress for workers, and it's really about that combination of workplace demands. There were a lot of work-related stressors on that last slide, but coming into combination with personal obligations and really just coming to a head, and that making Q4 feel really hard. And I know I've been having a lot of conversations with folks that are also naming there's a lot of time off in Q4. So
Yes.
in some ways it feels like we have the same amount to get done, maybe even a little bit more, because we're coming to the end of the year. We can't go, well, we'll just get it next quarter. It's like, we got to hit it the end of the year. And we have all this time where people are out. And so we have less time to actually get those things done.
Mm-hmm.
That resonates for you?
Yeah, and like navigating people's schedules if they're traveling, and then it's like thinking about childcare and Christmas break.
Yeah.
And it like on all the days off, and you're like, okay, well, I have to manage that, and then I have to think about that. It's trying to pack it all in addition to having all these personal things, professional. It's just it is like kind of not a melting pot, like a boiling point.
Yeah. It's a perfect storm, whatever
Storm. That's what I was looking for.
Terrible metaphor you want to use
metaphor.
for that. But yeah, it's not always just your schedule that you're trying to manage. It's other people's and schools and all of that. And then we're also in like flu season and cold season. So then you're trying to not come down with illness, or you're trying to, help your kids get over their illness. It's a lot. So no wonder Q4 feels like a lot, because it is. It absolutely is. And the thing about it is that the more stressed we get, and this isn't necessarily related just to Q4, it's in general, the worse we become at the very capacities that we need the most, because stress actually shrinks our prefrontal cortex temporarily, usually, but that area of our brain is the decision-making center. And so we don't have as much access to that like creative decision making. And stress also enlarges our amygdala. It activates our amygdala, which is our fear and reactivity center. So that kind of explains, if you think about like, man, why are people so, fill in the blank, on edge these days? Why are they like biting my head off about everything? Like, it's probably because they're operating from that amygdala, that fear and reaction center. So when we're under sustained stress, like prolonged stress, which is what's happening in Q4, our brain does three things really automatically without our permission. And the first is that it prioritizes immediate threats over long-term goals. So Elizabeth, tell me if this sounds at all like something you've experienced, where you feel like all you're doing is putting out fires, like putting out fires at home, putting out fires at work. And you know that you have these like bigger things that you need to work on, your bigger plans for next year, your what's gonna, what are we gonna do with the kids for summer next year? What's the strategic plan, and finalizing that. But you just can't really get access to those because everything is consumed with these fires.
That's exactly it. And I was just talking to my husband about how I feel like I have so many things to do, but I can't kind of do that deep work or that creative thinking or that space to. And so even this morning, I like blocked off my calendar and like put on music and really tried to get some stuff done that I've been literally like just been going down and further down my list. But and I also think it's like the Slacks, the emails, you feel like you're immediately contactable at all times and you have to immediately respond, which doesn't help when we're in like fight or flight.
Right. So not only do we have to contend with our brains and understand that these reactions are happening and how do we mitigate for them, but we also have to contend with the systems that are set up to really make this even worse, and put those boundaries into place for that. And one of the other reasons why you're probably feeling like, oh my gosh, why can I not get my brain in the right mental space, is because stress also narrows our focus. And when our focus gets narrowed, we just don't have the same access to creativity that we would when we have like a more zoomed out perspective or focus. We can't really see the big picture. We can't think about the big picture. I know for me, like sometimes when I'm in this state, I'll be sitting here at my desk and I'm just like blankly staring at my computer. I'm like, I know what I need to do. I know what I need to be creating, but it requires this bigger picture thinking and more creative thinking that I'm just really struggling to gain access to.
100%.
Spot on.
Couldn't agree more.
Spot on. And the last thing that happens automatically is we default to what's familiar, whether that's beneficial for us or not. We kind of fall into familiar patterns that just feel comfortable because they require less energy. And the important thing to know about these three things is that this isn't a flaw. And I always start with this type of information for folks that I'm working with, because I want everybody to know that this is just about being human. And it's so easy to beat ourselves up about these things like, oh, why can't I get this done? But these aren't character flaws. This is our brain doing exactly what it has evolved to do, to conserve energy and to keep us, I'm going to put it in quotes, safe. But there's a problem with that because our brain can't tell the difference between a genuine threat and, let's say, like a relative whose life goal is to get on our nerves. And so it's going to respond to the stress in the same way. And what we know from the research is that it's actually not stress that causes us to feel or become burned out. It's not stress that causes that overwhelming feeling or that suffering. It's how we respond to stress. And it sounds like a little detail, but it makes a huge difference. And this is a quote that I bring into almost any type of work that I'm doing with folks because it is so powerful. And if you're not familiar with Dr. Viktor Frankl, he was a psychologist, but even more importantly, he was a Holocaust survivor. And he wrote a lot, but this comes from his sort of seminal book called Man's Search for Meaning. And it's a phenomenal book. It's heavy, so you have to be in the right space to read it. But he is known for saying so many wise things. It's a book where you're like underlining and highlighting. Yes, this resonates. But this quote in particular is one of his most well-known. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose a response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And I don't know about you, but I would like growth and freedom. And most people I work with would like growth and freedom. And we're honestly like looking for it in all these places when it can be found in this one simple, but not often easy shift in terms of how we respond.
No, it's so hard. And
Yeah.
even if you're like, I need to give myself space, you just want to, sometimes you're just like, I just want to cross it off my list, or I know the answer right away. But this is a great reminder to just take a beat.
Yep. Yep. And the tricky part is like, okay, so yes, I love this quote, but how do we actually create this space? And so often what we turn to are these kind of surface level stress management strategies. And for those who are joining us live, I'd love if you've tried one or any of these to just put a 1 in the chat. Most of us have tried one or all of these, and maybe they've helped for a little bit, but ultimately we find ourselves back in that like boiling pot. I think you referenced, Elizabeth, the stress soup that's boiling over.
It's the stress soup.
The stress soup, that is not a soup we want to be
No,
making,
I do not
right?
want that.
Yeah. Making detailed to-do lists, surrounding yourself with to-do lists, saying, I just need to get through this week, this month, this quarter, engaging in activities like self-care activities, bubble baths, yoga classes, etc. cutting back on things like sleep or increasing caffeine just to like I just have to get this over the finish line. And then the age old, like hanging your head in your hands. And I want to be clear that like these aren't bad strategies, that it's not that we shouldn't be doing these things, but it's just that they're usually not enough because, if you have like a really deep wound, a Band-Aid might cover it up, might, help for a little bit, but it's not going to really do the trick, right? But if you have a superficial scratch, then a Band-Aid's great. Yeah, put the Band-Aid on it and you'll probably be fine. But when we're dealing with stress in this way, this sustained compounding stress, the Band-Aid is not going to cut it. We need a more comprehensive approach than to-do lists that are, they're good for organizing, but they don't change the fact that like there are 4,700 things on that to-do list that our brain's stress response is still kind of going haywire to, or yeah, I just need to get through. Seems good on the surface, but it actually keeps us in survival mode. We get through that week and then it's like, oh, it's still here. Oh, I need to get through another week. I need to get through another week. And we're upping our stress hormones that are designed for short-term crises, not, months-long endurance events. Self-care, I'm never going to say no to a yoga class, a massage, a bubble bath, like do those things, but let's not place the expectation on those things that afterwards we're going to get out of that yoga class and be like, oh, everything's great. We're no longer stressed, right? It's an important part of a routine, but it's not going to really make a big, huge difference in terms of how we're relating to stress. And I see you like, yep.
Yeah. Because I think too, it's like, well, let me just go, someone like my husband could be like, go get a massage. I'm like, I'll feel amazing. But
yeah,
the problem is that then I'll sit there and think about all the things I have to do.
Yes.
So,
and even if you don't, then you get out of the massage, you go back to your desk, whether it's that day, tomorrow, like you get back into your life and it's back. So they are great parts of a routine.
Yeah, like tools for your toolbox.
Right. And they feel good in the moment, but let's call them that. That's they're feel good in the moment activities. And the powering through, I mean, don't get me started about the powering through. And it's not because I'm above it. I do this myself. I fall into it. I just have to get this over the finish line. I'm just going to pull a couple late nighters, but we need sleep when we are stressed out. We don't need less sleep. We need more sleep, less caffeine. And so it's just kind of a backwards strategy. And I mean, put your head in your hands. It's warranted sometimes, but when you pick it up, you're still back in reality. Totally. Like those self-care techniques. So how do we approach stress and pressure instead? And in our work with Ezra Sage, and I know you know this, Elizabeth, we work with individuals and teams, and we use a lot of performance and sports psychology because even though our clients aren't athletes or rock stars, I mean, I think our clients are rock stars, but not in the formal sense. It doesn't matter if we are who we are, what our roles are, stress and pressure are the same. So what athletes and performers do is that they focus on what they can control. And I don't know if you're a fan of the Olympics or swimming or whatnot, but you're probably familiar, Elizabeth, with Michael Phelps, the most decorated Olympian in history. So he knows a thing or two about performing under stress and pressure. And I don't know if you've heard this story, but in the 2008 Beijing Olympics, he was swimming the 200-meter butterfly and his goggles failed and they filled with water. And so, I mean, I see your face. It's like, talk about stress in one of the most pivotal times of your career, your life, right? You've spent your life training for this. He could not see, but he had put in a lot of practice in advance to be able to respond to all kinds of stressors. And he actually has this technique that his coach gave him of counting strokes. So he didn't need to see. He knew exactly where he was in the lane by counting his strokes. And so that's what he kind of turned to in that moment of stress, what he could control. He couldn't control his goggles. He couldn't like time out. I got to swap. You're in it. And by the way, he won the gold and set a world record, all while essentially swimming blind. Impressive, right?
Yeah.
I know. I know. And it's like, oh, well, that's Michael Phelps. He's this world-class athlete. But we all can take what he did and use it to our advantage. It's like Adele. If you're familiar with Adele, she's one of the best-selling music artists, for those that might not be. And she has always been open about severe stage fright, like panic attacks, vomiting, and she can't control that emotional reaction that she has. But what she does instead is that she focuses on her self-talk, how she prepares to go out on that stage, and then she puts her attention on a single person in the audience. And this is something that a lot of public speakers do as well, because it can be overwhelming. And so she just looks at, can you imagine being that one person that she's looking at? You're like, oh,
I
she's
would
seeing me. Right? It's got to be incredible for that person. But that's what helps her. That's what's within her control. This is part of her career. She has to get on stage. But she can't control that pressure that she feels, but she can control certain things. And so that's what we're going to look at now. We're going to talk about 3 different levers that anybody can pull that are going to be the key to better managing stress and pressure at end of year, but really any time of year. So the first lever that we have is purpose over perfection. We love that word, perfection, right? So the trap, this talk is all about traps. The trap here is that our brain defaults to get everything done mode. That's that perfection piece. And our brain's threat response is at work when it is doing this. It can't really distinguish between reply to this email, spend time with my family. And so we look at the research on goal-directed behavior, and that shows that when you anchor to a clear purpose, your part of your brain that's in charge of planning and decision making, it overrides that panic, like, oh, I got to get everything done. I have to have everything done perfectly. So purpose acts as kind of like a filter that helps your brain categorize demands more accurately. And to put that into practice, like, okay, so what do I do with that piece of information? You can take about 10 minutes to answer these questions. Just like find a moment, lock yourself in the bathroom, find a moment to yourself to answer these questions. Like, what do I want this season, these next couple of months to feel like personally, professionally? What's important to me? How do I want people around me to feel? What do I want to experience? And then you use that as a decision-making filter. So I'm curious, Elizabeth, like, have you ever thought of this idea of bringing in purpose this time of year?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe, but I think when I'm right now and I'm thinking about, it's exactly what you said. I have to get everything done. Like when I'm thinking about Thanksgiving and, knowing that that's coming up, I'm like, okay, what do I need to do? I haven't thought about what do I want that holiday to feel like? What do I want those memories to be?
Right.
So this is a really good exercise for me.
Yeah, for us all. And again, we're
Yeah.
accustomed to being in autopilot mode. Remember that slide
Yes.
where we just like kind of default to pattern behavior. So we're like, okay, we're going to do everything the same as we always do when there's a big event, whether it aligns with what we actually want to be creating for ourselves and others or not. And again, personally or professionally, like, how do you want to close things out with your team for the year?
Yes.
What do you want to be creating at home with your family this time of year? So purpose is a really great lever for us all to be able to put a little of our agency around stress and pressure.
Mhm.
The second lever is around expectations versus reality. And, this time of year, external demands are always going to go up. That's just kind of, you just named some of them, but what's really insidious is that on top of that, we also increase our own internal expectations. We put the expectation that we need to be everywhere. We need to be involved in everything. We have to have every I dotted, every T crossed. We pile like all the shoulds on top of ourselves, right? And our brain, we're wired for belonging and it wants us to fit in, to be valued, to be seen as capable. And when we perceive that our worth is tied to meeting impossibly high standards, our brain then interprets any falling short as a social threat. And that triggers the same stress response as actual physical danger, which is kind of crazy how our brain operates. But most of these expectations are self-imposed. They're not necessarily about genuine need. So how do we bring more calm to this reality of how our brain operates? We assess, we make two lists, and we look at like what actually has to happen and how, and what are those stories that I'm making up about myself if it doesn't happen? Like I'm going to ruin Christmas, or my team is going to fall apart. Like those stories that aren't necessarily rooted in truth. And then we pay attention to, would I hold these standards for someone else that I care about? Is this actually required, or am I trying to control how I'm perceived? And we pick one thing, because there are probably a lot of things if you do this activity that are going to land on your list, but you just pick one thing and you're like, I'm going to let go of that expectation that I'm putting on myself to be everything to everyone and everywhere, which we have a real gift for, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And it just and I love the flipping it on its head of like, would you say this to someone you cared about?
A great
And
tool.
your answer is no. Like I would never think that. But why is it so hard for us not to give ourselves the same grace that we would give that someone we loved? So
Yeah.
I think about this all the time. Even when I think about like advice or, what would I do in this
Mhm.
situation? Like mine is never different, or mine is always different than what I would tell someone else.
Yeah. And that's why it's a great tool, because it so quickly brings us to that reality.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. The final lever that I'm going to share is around comparison and shame, and really like a shame spiral. And anybody who is familiar with Brene Brown's work is going to be like, oof, yep, I know a lot about shame. Yeah, it's something that affects us all. We don't want to talk about it because it feels really like, oh gosh, heavy. But it's important that we talk about it because it has real consequences. And our brains, again, are constantly scanning for like, how am I doing relative to everybody else around me? Right? Like, ooh, how am I doing compared to Elizabeth? How am I doing compared to my neighbor? Do they have their light? Do they have better lights on their house than me? I mean, our brain can really do a number, and it goes into overdrive this time of year, personally and professionally, for all kinds of reasons. We go to social media and we're like, everybody's having the perfect time together. Or we look at the company dashboard and we're like, everybody's crushing their goals. We are at the school play and all the other parents have it more together than I have it. We're just hardwired for this. And we fill these gaps between what we see and ourselves with this story of I'm falling behind, I'm not doing enough, I'm failing. And social comparison is evolutionary. It's a way our ancestors kind of understood where they stood in the group for survival, but it is not particularly helpful for our current stress
Mhm.
levels and that pressure to just be, kind of going back to that perfection and everything to everyone. And the problem, I mean, there's a lot of problems with shame, but the problem when we allow for that shame to take over, that less than, I'm not good enough feeling, is that it doesn't motivate us. It doesn't make us feel positive in any way. It triggers us to withdraw, or to overcompensate, to just do more. And neither one of those is what we need. So the practice here is to pay attention to when we're falling into comparison mode. And everybody's going to have kind of different red flags, but it might be like you go on social media and you're like feeling really deflated afterwards, or you hear that narrative of everyone else is XYZ.
Mhm.
And when you notice that in yourself, that's the time to just name it. Like, this is comparison. I'm falling into this trap, to check that reality and then to redirect it with some self compassion. So, What's the actual truth about my situation? What do I actually know about this other person who I'm comparing myself to? And back to what you find so helpful, Elizabeth, and that's so helpful for all of us. If someone I cared about was coming to me saying, "Oh my gosh, Elizabeth, everybody else at work is killing it and I just am sucking and I can't get my act together." Like, what would you say to that person? And I know you would have so much compassion to give to them,
Mhm.
and give it to ourselves. Not
Mhm.
easy.
No, it's not easy at all, and I think it's the social media of it all, which is so hard, and
Mhm,
we're just, we're on it constantly, and you just sit there and look at everybody, and, I think LinkedIn gives you that, "Oh, everybody's crushing it at work,"
mhm.
and Instagram gives you that, "Everybody's on vacation but me." But my friend likes to tell me, or she said to me in the past, "Green does not look good on you," and it always reminds me, like, it reminds me exactly what you're saying, though, is I'm comparing my full reality to someone's curated moment, and
Yep.
you have to stop. But it's hard to tell yourself that, but
Yeah.
these are really good tangible tips for, like, naming it and moving on.
Yep. And just paying attention to kind of those physiological markers, like how am I feeling in my gut? Like, how's
Yes.
my energy feeling? And like, that's a sign for you. And then
Mhm.
go into that reality finding. Like,
Yes.
what am I
It
actually looking
Right, and it's like when you get done scrolling, like, social media and you're in a bad mood, and I'm
at?
like, what does
Exactly.
that tell me?"
Was that really good for me? I'm not
Right.
so sure. Yeah, yeah. So those are the three levers. Now you have them. I have them as a reminder, which I always need. Everybody listening and watching has them. And now this is where we take action. So if there was one for those who are with us live, if there was one that really resonated for you, purpose over perfection, expectations versus reality, comparison, and that shame spiral, go ahead and put 1, 2, or 3 in the chat for whatever really resonated for you. But I always urge people to just pick one. I think sometimes we come away from these types of events and we're like, I'm going to do everything, I'm going to change everything. And that's really a lot to put on ourselves. And then we don't. And then we're back at it again, feeling poorly about ourselves. So if we can pick one and say, I'm going to focus on that for the next however many weeks. I don't want to do the countdown for the end of the year, but
Right.
6 weeks, something like that. I'm going to focus on this thing. Like, I guarantee that is going to, is it going to eliminate stress? No, but stress in itself is not a bad thing, but it will give you greater agency. It will give you
Yes.
that sense of like, okay, there's a lot happening that I can't control, but here's what I can control. And this actually does make a big difference in how I feel, my energy levels, my enthusiasm, my focus, all of those things that we're really looking to affect.
Mhm. And I do think all of these are quite connected. But if
Mhm.
I had to pick one that I will focus on, it's expectations versus reality. And it's
Mm.
really looking at these next 6 weeks and being like, what do I want to accomplish professionally? What is important to me personally as, we embark on the holiday season and whatever. And, like, what can I eliminate? Because there's so many things that you should be doing.
I was
And
like, "Whoa,
yeah,
whoa."
no, sorry. I know. Did you just say you hate the word should be eliminated? Did we talk
I
about that?
have like a bucket of
Yeah.
words that I try to stay away from.
Yeah. But
Sometimes it works, but a lot of times we should all over ourselves, and it's not particularly necessary or helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's the quote. There's the money quote. But I agree. It's like we think about all these things that we should be doing, but you don't need to be doing it. And the minute you release it, you're like, oh, okay, I'm not going to do
right,
that. And really, the few times that I have done it, it's felt really good. Like, to be like, I don't need to be doing all of this.
right. And the stories that we make up, we're like, "Oh
Yes.
my gosh, everybody's gonna be so upset if we don't have that one dish at Thanksgiving." And it's like, "Are they really? They'll get over it, even if they are." Like, it's not let's reality check our brains. I mean, if everybody's walking away with one thing, it's the fact that, like, we aren't wired for these types of environments. And so we have to be in charge of our brain, because our brain has these very automatic ways of showing up that aren't in service of us,
Mm-mm.
actually. And so we have to be the one to go, hey, I'm gonna get in the driver's seat now, and I'm gonna make those conscious decisions. And kind of going back to that Viktor Frankl quote, like, I'm gonna create that space. That's what we're in charge of creating the space between the trigger, the stimulus, and our response.
Yes, and I'm looking through some of the comments in the chat, and I think ones win by maybe one or two, but ones are a big one, and we have lots of. It's kind of across the board, but
Yeah.
I see a lot of ones, which is
Yeah.
interesting.
And there's no one that's right or
Right.
wrong. You can focus on one for the next 6 weeks and then come back to this, revisit, and focus on another one. But it's just, we're all so unique in terms of where we need to spend some time bolstering.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love all of these tips. This is
Yeah.
exactly what we needed.
Yeah. And I just want to make sure that, everybody is walking away with this feeling of like what I can do. I can access that space. I can change how my brain, like the relationship that my brain has and that I have with stress. I can choose a response. It's work that I do every single day, and I have seen it work firsthand and be really powerful. So if there's one thing that you're walking away with, I hope it's the feeling of empowerment and agency in this season, but just in terms of like our relationship with stress and pressure in general.
Yes, this is such a good reminder for Q4 and afterwards. So I hope
And beyond. Yeah.
yes, and beyond, because these things you can keep in your back pocket
Yeah.
all the time. It's just especially pertinent right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm happy if there were any questions that came up. And if people are still kind of processing through and are like, oh my gosh, how does this relate? And how does this land for me? You have my contact information. So you're always more than welcome to reach out and be like, I'm struggling. Because sometimes, I know when I showed that first lever, Elizabeth, you were like, oh, I actually have never thought about this. Like we've thought about stress and the bubble bath a lot. But we don't always think about our hardwiring or neurobiological wiring when it comes to stress.
Yes, and just so everybody knows, my colleague dropped in Ashley's LinkedIn information in the chat, so make sure to give Ashley a follow. But I think it's also too what was I you brought up something and now I got sidetracked. I forgot what I was gonna say. But I think there are so many takeaways that we can all use. And I think there's some questions, but I'm sure people will have them after we kind of start talking because it does. You have to step away and process it. But I have
Mhm.
a question for you.
Yeah.
And I'll leave your contact information up for just a little bit, and then I'll bring us just back up front and center. But so there's so much we can do for ourselves when it comes to stress management. But from your point of view, what is your recommendation in communicating that to your partner, your boss?
Mhm.
Like we have to communicate that outward.
Yeah.
So how do you recommend taking that next step?
Yeah. I think the biggest opportunity and the simplest, again, simple doesn't always mean easy, but is to be open about where you're at. So often we're expecting people to be mind readers. That particularly happens in home relationships. Or we are like, oh, I don't want to bother somebody with this. But it's always helpful to let people know kind of where you're at emotionally, where you're at with your stress levels. And it is vulnerable to share that because, especially if we're kind of high achieving individuals and we place that expectation on ourselves that, like, I don't need any help. Like, I can get everything done. To say otherwise feels like a compromise to our worth and our identity. But the more we can be open about that reality that we are human beings, then that gives other people permission to do the same. And it opens up the conversation. And especially in the workplace, if you're in a leadership position, that's really important for the people who are on your team to see. You can say all day to people who you lead, like the importance of, it's okay to not be able to do it all. And it's okay to ask for help. But if people don't see you asking for help and see you and working through your challenges with the stress and the pressure that you're under, then they're going to just think that that's lip service. So, letting people in on it is what I would say.
Well, and back to Brene Brown about being vulnerable. I
Mhm.
mean, it really does. It works both ways, and especially in a leadership position. And I
Yeah.
think one of the things we talk about at the Mom Project a lot is like, we want to for better or for worse, we want to bring our whole selves to work because that's so much of what we do. And we walk, and we take that with us throughout the day. And so being able to show up personally and professionally in the workplace is something that is really valued and a good skill because it allows other people to do the same.
100%. Like if we're all walking around with this wall up of like perfection and unrealistic, I have everything together, then we're putting the pressure not only on ourselves, but we're putting that pressure on other people. And we're creating these environments. I think we've all probably existed in those spaces where that's the culture, whether again, personally or professionally. And that's just adding to stress because it's unrealistic and it is heavy to carry this like mask or this wall of I have it all together. I got everything. I'm doing everything perfectly. That takes energy. And we have a finite amount of energy.
Yeah.
So if you're spending it on being perfect, then yeah, you're not going to have that energy to use on things that are more constructive, more fulfilling, more aligned with what's important to you.
Well, and that's a good reminder to write down what you really want this season to look like.
Exactly.
And how you can emulate that.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. If only there was like a calculator where you could punch it in and be like, okay, so I can spend that much time on this and this much time on that. And then my energy is sapped and I have to go to sleep.
Yeah. And then the day's done and I have to get up and do it all over again.
Right. Right.
Well, it seems like everybody is sitting with all of this information and
that's usually the case.
Yes, and I also think it's LinkedIn Live. So we're not on a Zoom. So everyone gets a little like, this is all out there. So I get it. But do send Ashley a note. You can see her email up there. And then we have put her information into the chat so you can easily reach out about any questions that you may have. Ashley, thank you so much. I feel like I'm going to send this to everybody at the Mom Project and be like, this is a good reminder as we close out the year, like some good tips to really be mindful and meaningful of how we're going to close out Q4.
Yeah. Can you imagine like a team and an organization where everybody is doing these things? That's like, so nice.
Well, and as you were talking, like I'm just thinking about how important your work is, especially for a team, because as a team, you can see how everybody else is reacting, how everybody else is interacting. You can hear, I can't imagine what teams go through and then they, how they experience it afterwards and how they come after your work, they come together in a different way.
And when teams go through work like this, there's this mutual commitment and this like mutual compassionate accountability. So people can like hear, because sometimes we can't hear it ourselves right away, but people can hear and go, "Ooh, Elizabeth, I feel like maybe you're placing some impossible expectations on yourself." And like that sort of dialogue can happen where we're all helping each other, which is a pretty, dare I say, magical thing to have occur on a team.
If someone told me that at work, I'd be like, what? Who, me?
You need to work with a bunch of coaches. That's how we all
but truly. Okay, we did have not a question, but a comment. But Dina says that she's been putting a lot of pressure on herself. So she's taking a break until after Thanksgiving break to focus on her mental health. And so Dina, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being vulnerable. We're so happy you're doing that and taking care of yourself, because if you take care of yourself, you'll show up as a better, wife and mom, and you have to fill your own cup first. So we wholeheartedly believe that.
The ripple effect is real. And, I'm guessing that's not an easy conversation to have. And again, our brain is going to it's going to try to keep us like safe, which means small and tiny. And it's going to go, don't bother them with that. It's going to do a lot to encourage us not to have that conversation. And I am like so proud of you, Dina, for pushing through that and tapping into your courage to actually have that conversation. And I'm guessing that all of like the scenarios that your brain may have come up with, like, ooh, they're going to think this, they're going to think you're inadequate. Like none of that actually happened. And I'm guessing you got a lot of support. And one of the beautiful things that happens that Elizabeth, you just named, is like, now you've given them permission to also have moments where they're not okay. And they can bring it to the family and say, hey, I need this from you. I need a little extra support. And that all that does is make relationships and systems stronger. So you just, by virtue of you stepping into that vulnerable space, you just made your family stronger.
No, and we love that.
I love that. I know.
Well, Ashley, this has been so great. Thank you so much for all of
Thank
these
you.
tips.
Thank
It's
you.
been so helpful. And to everybody who joined our masterclass today, thank you so much. We have a lot of other resources over on our blog and again on our YouTube channel where you can find recordings of all of our masterclasses. So I encourage you to check those out. Ashley, I hope you have a wonderful holiday season. Thank you so
Likewise.
much. And we'll see you again soon.
All right.
Thanks,
Enjoy the
everybody.
end of the year, everybody.
Bye.